Hey everybody, welcome to the 10K Project. We are the largest community of investors who actively fund Black-owned businesses. But today's session is not about funding businesses. Today is about growing your business, starting your business, and more importantly, turning your social media into an ATM machine. Everybody say money, money, money in your head, because that is what we're talking about today with the 10K Project member, Chanel Evans. Welcome, Chanel.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, we are excited to have you. This is such a great topic. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about your social media expertise.
Yeah, so I have been working with coaches, consultants, experts for over 12 years, being able to help them grow their businesses by leveraging the power of social media, being able to really show up authentically, but more importantly, being able to talk about and attract money into your business with new clients, with income and business opportunities. So yeah, super excited to just share and learn more about the audience, but ways that you can literally translate your timeline and make it turn into an ATM machine business.
So can any business do this?
Absolutely. Yes. Any business that recognizes that they need to be on social media, they want to be able to leverage the power of expanding their audience, but also, really wants to build collaboration as well. Because a lot of times when we think about social media, we're thinking only from a customer or client standpoint, but there's a powerful way to be able to leverage social media to build up your collaborations as well.
Perfect. So, all right. So let's take a step back. So there are three major groups of people that I think of when it comes to potential customers that are out
Hmm.
there that you could attract to yourself. Those are like consumers. So your
Hmm.
business to B2C, business to consumer, business B2B, business to business. And then within that, there's like your Fortune 500 mid-sized businesses versus your small businesses. And then B2G, which is business to government. So
Hmm.
really quickly, can you talk about like all, let's say four of those,
Okay.
with regards to just some of the things that people should think about if they're trying to reach consumers versus small businesses, large businesses, and then the government?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you asked this question because one of the very first things that you need to do before you just jump out there and start taking selfies and posting on social media is you got to have a vision in mind. You got to know why you're in the space that you're in, but more importantly, you have to know how does your business make money, right? And so like you really did a good job of explaining that, but the reason why that's so important is because then that helps you identify your ideal client, who it is you're designed to work with, but more importantly, where do they hang out online? So if you are working with government contracts, like is it LinkedIn your space or do you need to be on TikTok? If you are a consumer-based business, do you need to be on TikTok or should you be hanging out on Facebook or a combination of both? And so
Mhm.
it is really important to really understand your business model, where your people hang out with so that you can be in a place that you can attract.
What else besides knowing where your audience is should people know or think about as they're, let's say, putting together a social media plan? What are
Yeah.
some of the things they should think about?
Yeah, so here's what I recommend that you do is think about not just who you want to work with, but think about what 5 questions will they have for you before they get on the phone with you about your business, about your industry, about your services. 5 questions that you know that your ideal client always asks about you. Or if you are a government contractor, that agency that before they interview you, what do they need to know about you before they get on the phone with you? Those answers are now become social media content for you. And so not just being on social media and being in the right place, but knowing what to say to be able to attract them and answer the questions that they have so that you can become attractive to them as a client or as a contractor.
What other things in that social media plan besides, that do we think about content? Do we think about how often we're posting? Like if we were to put together, just a basic social media
Hmm.
plan, period, what are some of the other things we want to think about?
Yeah, so no, that is all of the above. So we're gonna think about all of those things. One, we're gonna think about your overall vision. Where is your business going over the next 6 months or a year? This really helps you fine tune and say, okay, I'm going to be launching a coaching program, in the next 3 months. I'm going to host a
Mhm.
podcast in the next 6 months. So then you kind of know where you're going, and it
Mhm.
gives you in mind as you're showing up online, who can I collaborate with? Then you want to think about your ideal client attraction. And how you are actually showing up. So whether it is from a branding asset standpoint, is it photography that you need to engage, from a video content standpoint, but really getting in tune with your ideal client or that customer or that agency that you're going to be working with. How do they make buying decisions? Where do they show up? What types
Mhm.
of things keep them up at night? And how can you and your service be able to help them? And then when you want to think about your content. And so you mentioned, just from a content standpoint, content, when we think about it, it's your captions, it is the photos that you have out, it's blogs, it is your video. So you want to think about not just your vision, but your content and how it relates to where you want to go, but also your ideal client. And then the most important part that a lot of times people don't think about is the execution. And so when you think about where I'm going to show up, okay, now I have these programs, here's who it's designed for. And a lot of times that's where we stall out because we're like, you know what? Like that was a lot. I did went through all of that, and now you have to execute. And so being consistent, showing up, and not just consistent in, okay, I'm going to show up every day, Monday at 9 a.m. or Tuesdays at 5, but showing up consistently in your messaging so that you are known as the go-to person for your niche or your audience, and being able to show up consistently across the platform. So if you're on LinkedIn and you're showing up in one way, but then I hop over to your Facebook and you're talking about something completely different. And then I hear you on Clubhouse and you're still talking about a completely different business. You want to be consistent, not just from a time standpoint, but consistent in how you're showing up in your messaging so that your client, regardless of where they see you, they know that that's how we build trust, because they can
Mhm.
trust in who it is you are, who it is you say you are rather, and then trust that the content that you're putting out always talks about a particular theme or your niche.
Yeah. Now, you gave probably other people listening, I know you gave me some heart palpitations when you talked about the content, pictures and blogs and things
Mhm.
like that. That sounds very time intensive. Do I need to be Lori Harvey or Kim Kardashian? Do I need to hire a professional photographer? Because you see some people, even on LinkedIn, look like they came from a photo shoot and things like that. Talk to us a little bit about the person who's a little bit more private, the person who doesn't want their whole life on social media, or the person who just doesn't have a lot of money for a lot of
Mm.
the fancier stuff that we're seeing out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to show up as your best self, but you also want to show up just as you are, the best version of it, right? And so when you think about showing up, don't get heart palpitations about showing up as you are, but you also want to show up because your clients are ready for you. They want to see you, right? And
Mhm.
so a lot of times as, entrepreneurs, we're like, oh, well, I need this or I should do this. But when we let some of that stuff go and just realize that even our story is our content. Our story is content. Thinking about, as I mentioned earlier, those 5 questions your ideal client wants to hear from you and answers, that's content. And so let's not recreate the wheel every single time. You're able to, from a time standpoint, leverage your content and be able to show up in different places in different formats, repurposing content. So I love that you brought that time element in because it can feel overwhelming, but it also, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed because there are a number of strategies in place to be able to repurpose content, but then also showing up authentically, and that's sharing your story. And you don't need any fancy content for
Yeah. Now, what if I'm a super private person?
that.
I, you know, I don't want my whole life on social media. How do I handle that?
A very good question as well. And I get this a lot from introverts because they're like, hey, like I am a quiet person or introverted person. But here's the thing, social media is a tool designed for us to leverage so we can grow our businesses. And from an introverted standpoint, if you're a private person standpoint, there's some things that I talk about, even as a social media strategist, that I talk about on my chats with my friends in my home that I will never ever post on social media, right?
Mhm.
And so as is your business, is your feed, you get to pick what you post and what you share. You want to share enough so that you show up authentically and that your ideal client can relate to you. But at the same time, there's some things that you should always feel that you have power to control over. So some of my clients, they don't talk about their kids at all,
Mhm.
on their
Mhm.
pages. Some of my clients don't talk about their relationship. So it's up to you on what you share and then what you hold back for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen certain people who will show like they're newborn, but once the child gets a certain age where the features get distinguished, then they, move them off social media and things like that. So some people are very protective of their home. So
Hmm.
they don't want their home address. And if you work from home, sometimes, that information gets out. So they'll get like a Regis or someplace like that where
Hmm.
that'll be their business office,
Yep.
because sometimes people need to have an address right
Hmm.
out there. There are also ways to use like VPNs, for example, in order
Yep.
to protect you. I don't think it's 100% protection, but
Hmm.
at least it's, some protection,
Yeah, it
some
gives you
layer
a
of
little sense of
protection.
security.
A little cushion as well, with regards to data. Um, Another thing that you mentioned that I kind of want to just make sure, I don't know if people caught it, but you talked about 3 to 6 months. And I will
Hmm.
say personally, um, 2016, 2015-ish,
Hmm.
I did like an audit of my business and I found out that the two places I was getting business from was LinkedIn and Google/YouTube.
Hmm.
And I focused on one at a time. The first one I focused on was LinkedIn. And it
Hmm.
did take me 6 months from the start of that process to getting it really up, running, content going, my profile perfected,
Hmm.
to get that up and running. And then I spent another 6 months focused on, like, I set up a blog and I started my YouTube channel and things
Hmm.
like that. Talk to us a little bit about the length of time that people really need to think about with regards to instituting this and actually really seeing it work in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, this is an excellent question because we live in sort of this microwave society where we see an influencer with 100,000, likes and assume that that happened overnight, and it usually doesn't. So
Yeah.
I like to recommend at a minimum 90 days for you to be able to implement, learn how to execute, figure out what's working, looking at analytics and then testing, because a lot of what you see in marketing is testing and being able to see what's working and what's connecting with your audience. So I recommend a minimum of 90 days, but you also want to be able to have enough time to, during that period, be able to say, okay, here during this 90-day cycle, this worked really well in my business. Like you just said, you tried out some stuff on LinkedIn, and just imagine, excuse me, if you stopped
Mhm.
at 90 days when you were really ramping up that momentum, like what would have happened if you kept it going for 6 months or 9 months or a
Mhm.
year? So you do want to recommend, I do highly recommend it, minimum of 90 days, but
Mhm.
really like that 6 month period to be able to see what's working, that traction, but then being able to take your lessons learned and apply it and make it that much better.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I will say is it's very important to select the right social media
Mm-hmm.
platform, because if I had chosen, for example, Facebook, I
Mm-hmm.
would not have been as successful as LinkedIn because people were not looking on Facebook for a business plan writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're looking on LinkedIn for it and on YouTube for the videos for it and in
Mm-hmm.
Google search engine, Bing search engine. So that goes back to one of the things you originally said, like you can work 6 months on a social platform, and if it's the wrong one, then you're going to get frustrated as well.
Right.
So yeah, so I think that that's super important. The other thing that you just mentioned was, the person with the 100,000 followers and
Mm-hmm.
likes. Talk about, does a person need 100,000 followers and 1 million likes on each post in order to get the ATM social media presence out there?
Absolutely not. So you can build a multiple 6 and 7 figure business with fewer than, even just as little as, between 2 and 5,000. I see it happen all the time. I see
Mm.
contracts being given to, it's because it's really based on your influence, right? And when we stop focusing on building up the following, but really building our influence, that's where the ATM machine kind of kicks in at, right? Because we are building up our authority and we're showing off that we're an authority in the space and not just doing it for vanity metrics. Because I know people that have 10,000 followers, but they don't have 10,000 in their bank account. You want to be able to leverage your audience so that you can really turn your followers into clients, but it doesn't, I use that as an example, but when we think about your followers, because here's the thing, if you had 100 people on your feed, that might not sound like that much. But if you had 100 people in your living room right this moment, that would sound like a lot. You would be overwhelmed. So when we learn how to message and resonate and really be able to connect with those followers that we do have, that's where the ATM machine comes in at. Instead of always chasing for more, you have to learn how to convert what we do have versus keep chasing and building up that following. So doing it by building up your following, but more importantly, building up your influence and building out a team of people and sponsors that are going to champion for you, but also put you in the right places at the right time as well.
Yeah. So you've given people a lot of information to kind of start thinking about what are some of the next steps that people should take, if they say, okay, I am going to dedicate the next 6 months to my social media, you
Mhm.
know, now what? What do we do?
Yeah, so make it a point of, even if you just put an hour on your calendar and sit down with yourself, or if you have a small team, sitting with yourself and say, okay, what do I have going on in the next month? And then drafting out what that content looks like, but also drafting out how you're going to execute. So are you going to show up on LinkedIn? Are you going to show up on Facebook? How often are you going to post? So building out an execution strategy. And if you find that you are in a position where you're like, you know what, I need some tweaks, I need some help, I need somebody looking over my shoulder, it's
Mhm.
okay in your business to reach out to a consultant and bring on somebody that can just give you a second set of eyes and give you some strategy to implement.
Now, I know you have said that you can be that second set of eyes. Why don't you tell everybody, like if they just, want to contact you with a few extra questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to meetwithchanel.com. It gives a full description of people I've worked with, but also ways that you can leverage social media and help it work for you. So yes, go to meetwithchanel.com. That's the very best way to get a hold of me. And I look forward to helping to be that second set of eyes for you.
Perfect. All right, everybody, turn that social media into an ATM. Thank you, Chanel, for being here with us. And
Yeah.
everybody, look, get your business up, get it running, get it profitable as quickly as possible. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next video. Take care.